The air smelled of damp earth and pine needles as Ethan Carter pulled his beat-up Chevy pickup into the gravel lot of Pine Creek, Tennessee. It was late October, and the sun was already dipping below the Smoky Mountains, casting long, jagged shadows over the town. Ethan, a 32-year-old freelance photographer from Chicago, had come here chasing a story, or rather, chasing the ghost of one. His camera bag sat heavy on the passenger seat, stuffed with lenses, a tripod, and a notebook scribbled with rumors he'd found online. Whispers of a place called Hollow Road, a stretch of dirt just outside Pine Creek, where people vanished without a trace. Ethan wasn't a believer in ghosts or ghouls or things that went bump in the night. He'd built a modest YouTube, following about 40,000 subscribers, debunking urban legends with grainy footage of abandoned houses, creaky barns, and haunted forests, all explained away with logic and a dry sense of humor that his audience seemed to love. He'd narrate in his low, gravelly voice, pointing out the loose floorboards that creaked or the wind that howled just right to sound like a scream. But Hollow Road was different. The posts he'd found on X weren't the usual overblown creepypastas full of dramatic flair and cheap jump scares. They were raw, fragmented people begging for help, claiming they'd seen things in the woods, things that didn't make sense, things that couldn't be explained with a shaky camera and a smirk. One user at 10Shadow87 had written, "It's not a road. It's a mouth. It eats you slow." The account went silent after that. No replies, no follow-ups, just a void where a person used to be. He rubbed his stubbled jaw, glancing at the GPS on his dashboard. Pine Creek was a speck of a town population 842. According to the faded welcome sign he'd passed on the way in, its paint chipped and curling like old skin. A gas station with a single pump, a diner called May's with a flickering neon sign, a church with a crooked steeple that looked like it might topple in the next storm, and a handful of clapboard houses clinging to the hillside, their windows dark even in the daytime. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets festered like mold in the damp and outsiders stuck out like a sore thumb. Ethan liked that. Small towns had stories, and stories paid the bills. Views, likes, maybe a sponsor if he played it right. He pulled up to the Pine Haven Motel, a squat, single-story building with peeling paint, and a neon vacancy sign buzzing and flickering in the dust like a dying firefly. The gravel crunched under his tires as he parked, and he grabbed his camera bag before heading inside. The lobby smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner, a losing battle against decades of neglect. The clerk, an older woman with wiry gray hair and a smoker's rasp, didn't look up from her crossword puzzle as he approached the counter. "Room for one," Ethan said, setting his bag down. She slid a key across the desk without a glance. "Room 7. No pets, no smoking. Checkouts at 10. "Got it," he said, forcing a smile as he picked up the key. It's metal cold and scratched. "Hey, you know anything about Hollow Road?" Her pen froze mid-word, hovering over the paper. She looked up, eyes narrowing into slits, her face a map of wrinkles deepened by suspicion. "You a reporter?" "Photographer," he said, tapping his camera bag with a casual air he'd perfected over years of nosing into places he didn't belong. "Just curious." She snorted, a harsh sound that rattled in her throat, and went back to her puzzle, scratching in a letter with deliberate force. "Curious gets you lost out there. Stay on the main road, city boy." Ethan nodded, but her warning only fueled him. He'd heard worse angry locals yelling about trespassing, vague threats from drunks in bars, even a farmer once who'd waved a shotgun until Ethan talked him down with a grin and a promise to leave. It was all part of the gig, the texture that made his videos feel real. He hauled his gear to room 7, a musty box with a sagging bed, a nightstand scarred with cigarette burns, and a television that buzzed like a swarm of bees when he turned it on. He dropped his bag, pulled out his notebook, and flipped through his notes. The ink smudged from his sweaty palms. Scout Hollow Road tomorrow. Shoot some B-roll of the woods, and whatever he could find, maybe interview a few locals if they'd talk. Simple. Routine. Another story to tell. Another paycheck to cash. That night, he dreamed of a sound of low, rhythmic thudding, like footsteps on wet earth. Steady and relentless. He saw shadows moving between trees. Too tall, too thin. But when he tried to focus, they slipped away like smoke. He woke with a start. The room bathed in the faint orange glow of the motel sign bleeding through the thin curtains. His phone read 3:17 a.m., the numbers glowing accusingly in the dark. He rolled over, dismissing it as road fatigue after the 8-hour drive from Chicago. But the unease lingered like a splinter under his skin, sharp and impossible to ignore. The next morning, Ethan grabbed coffee and a stale donut from May's Diner across the street. The kind of place where the air was thick with grease, and the coffee tasted like it had been brewed last week. The waitress, a wiry girl named Jenny, with a nose ring and a faded tattoo of a rose on her wrist, eyed him warily as she refilled his mug. He'd seen that look before, small-town suspicion, a mix of curiosity and distrust. He leaned on the counter, keeping his tone light. "So," he said, "you know anything about Hollow Road?" Jenny's hand paused mid-pour, a drop of coffee splashing onto the counter. She wiped it with a rag, her movements quick and jerky. "Folks don't go there," she said, her voice low, like she didn't want the handful of truckers hunched over their plates to hear. "Not unless they're stupid or desperate." "Why's that?" Ethan asked, leaning forward, his curiosity sharpening. She hesitated, glancing at the truckers, then out the window to the dark line of trees beyond town, their branches swaying faintly though the air was still. "Bad history. People disappear. Been that way since my granddad's time. They say the ground's wrong out there." "Wrong how?" he pressed, his fingers itching for his notebook. "Just wrong." She shrugged, but her eyes darted back to the window, lingering on the forest. "You want my advice? Take your picture somewhere else." Ethan smirked, sipping his coffee. "Thanks, but I've got a job to do." She shook her head, muttering something under her breath as she walked away, leaving him with the bitter taste of burnt coffee and a growing itch to see Hollow Road for himself. He drove out of Pine Creek just after noon, the sky a flat gray slab overhead, heavy with the promise of rain that never came. Hollow Road wasn't on any map, not Google, not the gas station atlas he'd bought on a whim. He'd pieced together directions from X posts and a blurry screenshot of a hand-drawn sketch someone had uploaded months ago. 10 miles east, on Route 14, then a left, past an old oak with a lightning scar splitting its trunk. The pavement gave way to gravel, then to a rutted dirt path snaking through dense forest, the trees closing in until the canopy blocked out most of the light, turning day into dusk. He found the oak gnarled and blackened, its branches twisted like claws reaching for the sky, and turned left. The path narrowed, barely wide enough for the truck, the underbrush scraping the sides with a sound like fingernails on metal. Ethan slowed to a crawl. The engines rumbled, the only sound in a world gone quiet. No birds sang. No wind rustled the leaves. Just silence, thick and heavy, pressing against his eardrums like water at the bottom of a lake. Then he saw it. A weathered sign nailed to a tree. The letters faded but legible, carved into a plank of splintered wood. Hollow Road. Below it, someone had scratched a single word in jagged, uneven lines. Leave. Ethan grinned, pulling his camera from the passenger seat and snapping a photo. The shutters click, loud in the stillness. Perfect, he muttered, his breath fogging briefly in the cold. This was gold authentic, creepy, exactly what his subscribers wanted. The kind of raw detail that'd get them commenting and sharing before the video was halfway done. He parked the truck, the tires sinking slightly into the soft earth, and stepped out, slinging his camera bag over his shoulder. The air was colder here, sharper, laced with the scent of rot-wet leaves, decaying wood, something older and fouler underneath. He adjusted his lens, framing shots of the sign, the road stretching ahead like a scar through the trees, the pines towering like sentinels, their bark slick and dark, glistening as if they'd been dipped in oil. He walked deeper, boots crunching on a carpet of dead leaves, the sound swallowed almost instantly by the forest. The road was a tunnel of shadow, flanked by trees that seemed to lean inward, their branches interlocking overhead like a cage. He filmed as he went, narrating softly for the raw footage, his voice steady despite the chill creeping up his spine. This is Hollow Road, folks. No cars, no people, just a whole lot of nothing. Let's see if the rumors hold up. He kept moving, the path twisting and dipping, the trees growing denser, their trunks so close he could barely see the sky. 20 minutes in, he stopped, his breath catching as something glinted in the underbrush a rusted license plate, half buried in the dirt, its edges curled like a dead insect. He crouched, brushing away leaves with his free hand, the metal cold against his skin. Tennessee tags, expired 1983. The numbers faded but legible under a layer of grime. Nearby, a shredded tire lay tangled in vines, its rubber cracked and peeling. He filmed it, his pulse quickening, the camera's weight suddenly heavier in his hands. "Check this out," he said, zooming in on the plate. "Looks like someone left in a hurry or didn't leave at all." Abandoned vehicles were a staple of horror stories, the kind of trope he'd debunked a dozen time-stolen cars dumped by thieves, breakdowns left to rust. But finding one here, unclaimed and forgotten, felt real. A puzzle piece that didn't fit his usual explanations. He stood, scanning the woods, the silence pressing harder now. A weight on his chest, making it harder to breathe. Then he heard a faint thud, like a footfall, heavy and deliberate. He froze, camera raised, the lens sweeping the trees. "Hello?" he called, his voice cracking slightly. The word hanging in the air before the forest swallowed it whole. Nothing, just the echo of his own breath, quick and shallow. "Probably a deer," he said aloud, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow, even to him. But his hands trembled as he packed the license plate and tire scraps into his beige Vidance, he told himself. Proof for the video, something tangible to show his audience. He'd explore a little more, get a few more shots, then head back before the light faded completely. The thudding came again, an hour later, louder this time, rhythmic, like a heartbeat in the earth. Ethan was deeper down Hollow Road now, the truck a distant speck behind him, barely visible through the tangle of trees. He'd found more relics as he went, trusted tools scattered like offerings, a cracked eyeglass lens glinting in the dirt, a child's shoe with the sole worn through, its laces frayed and knotted. Each discovery gnawed at him, chipping away at the calm he'd built over years of chasing shadows. But he kept filming, kept talking, as if his voice could anchor him in this place where nothing felt right. The road dipped into a shallow ravine, the earth soft and black underfoot, sucking at his boots with every step. At the bottom, a stream trickled through moss-covered rocks, its water murky and still, reflecting nothing but the gray sky above. On the far bank stood a shack, wooden, slumped, its roof caved in on one side, the walls weathered to a dull gray. Ethan's breath caught, a grin tugging at his lips despite the unease coiling in his gut. This was it, the centerpiece of his video, the kind of find that'd make his subscribers lean closer to their screens. He crossed the stream, boots sinking into the mud, the cold seeping through his socks, and approached the shack, camera rolling. The door hung ajar, swaying slightly, though there was no breeze, its hinges creaking faintly. Inside, shadows pooled in the corners, thick and unyielding, resisting the weak light that filtered through the broken roof. He stepped over the threshold, the air hitting him like a slapstick with mildew, and something sweeter, cloying, like spoiled meat left to fester. A table sat in the center, its surface stained dark, the wood warped and splintered. Scattered around it were papers yellowed, curling at the edges, brittle under his touch. He picked one up, squinting at the faded ink in the dimness. A map, hand-drawn, with Hollow Road marked in red, the lines shaky but precise. Beside it, a single sentence, scratched in a hurried scrawl. It comes when the ground hums. Ethan frowned, pocketing the paper, his fingers brushing the rough edge. Weird, he muttered, panning the camera across the room. The walls were bare, except for scratches deep, frantic gouges, like someone had clawed at the wood with their bare hands, desperate to escape. He filmed them, his narration faltering, the words catching in his throat. Okay, this is getting intense. Looks like someone didn't want to stick around. He forced a chuckle, but it died quickly, drowned by the stillness. The thudding started again, closer now, vibrating through the floorboards. A pulse he felt in his teeth. Ethan spun toward the door, heart pounding, the camera shaking in his grip. "Who's there?" he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls, louder than he'd meant. Silence answered, thick and suffocating. Then a whisper, not words, just a hiss. Like air escaping a punctured tire, soft and insidious. It came from behind him, from the shadowed corner he'd sworn was empty. He turned, camera sweeping the space. But there was nothing, just the table, the papers, the scratches staring back like eyes. The hiss grew, joined by a low hum, a sound he didn't hear so much as feel, reverberating in his bones, rattling his skull. The ground trembled beneath his feet, a subtle quake that sent dust drifting from the ceiling. Ethan bolted, his boots slamming against the floor as he lunged for the door. Outside, the ravine was darker, the trees tighter, their branches woven into a lattice that blotted out the sky as if they'd shifted while he was inside, closing ranks. He ran toward the stream, splashing through it, the water icy and black, clinging to his jeans. The hum followed, steady, insistent, a course building in the air around him. He glanced back. The shack was gone, swallowed by the shadows, the ravine a blank expanse of dirt and trees. Shit, 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 he gasped, fumbling with his camera, the strap tangling around his arm. The screen flickered, static cutting through the footage, distorting the trees into jagged shapes. He kept running, the road a blur of dirt and roots, his breath ragged in his throat. The hum grew louder, a symphony now, pulsing in time with the thudding steps that weren't his, steps that matched his pace but came from everywhere and nowhere. He stumbled, catching himself against a tree, the bark slick under his palm, and pushed on, the truck finally looming ahead like a lifeline. He reached it, slamming the door behind him, his hands shaking as he jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, a guttural sound that cut through the hum, and he floored it, tires spinning on the loose earth, kicking up clods of mud. The road stretched endlessly ahead, the trees a tunnel of black, their branches scraping the roof like fingers trying to hold him back. He didn't stop, didn't look in the rearview mirror, didn't breathe until he hit pavement. The motel's lights a faint beacon in the distance, glowing through the dusk like a promise of safety. Back in room 7, Ethan locked the door, the click of the deadbolt loud in the silence, and dumped his gear on the bed, the mattress groaning under the weight. His hands shook as he plugged his camera into his laptop, the footage downloading with agonizing slowness. He paced, running his fingers through his sweat-damp hair, replaying the day in his mind. The shack, the map, the hum that wouldn't leave his ears. When the files loaded, he sat, hunched over the screen, and played them back. The shack was there, clear as day, its sagging roof and stained table frozen in the frame. The map, the scratch-a-saw of it undeniable. But the audio was wrong. His narration was drowned out by the hum, layered with whispers he couldn't understand. A cacophony of voices overlapping in a language that felt ancient and alive. In one frame, behind the shack's door, a shadow moved tall, thin, impossible, its edges sharp against the gloom. He paused the video, staring at the shadow, his stomach twisting into knots. He hadn't seen it then, hadn't felt it watching, but there it was, captured in pixels, a presence that didn't belong. He uploaded the raw clips to his laptop, his fingers clumsy on the keys, and typed a frantic post to X. Found something on Hollow Road. Not sure what I saw. Footage is messed up. Anyone know what this is? He attached a still of the shadow, the image grainy but unmistakable, and hit send, the tweet vanishing into the ether. His phone buzzed almost instantly, the screen lighting up with notifications. Replies flooded in, some skeptical, calling it CGI or a hoax. Others panicked, urging him to burn the footage and run. At 10 Shadow 87 wrote, "You shouldn't have gone. It knows you now." Ethan stared at the words, his mouth dry, his pulse thudding in his ears. The account had been dormant for months. Its last post, the warning he'd read back in Chicago. But here it was, alive again, speaking to him. He scrolled through the replies, his hands trembling, but found no answers, just questions and fear mirroring his own. He didn't sleep that night. The hum lingered in his ears, faint but constant, a thread tying him to Hollow Road. He sat on the bed, the laptop open, the footage looping silently, the shadow staring back each time it passed. At dawn, he packed his truck, shoving his gear into the back with more force than necessary, and checked out, the clerk watching him from behind her counter with a knowing smirk that made his skin crawl. "Not staying?" she asked, her voice rough as sandpaper, her eyes glinting with something he couldn't name. "Got what I needed," he said, avoiding her gaze, the key clattering as he dropped it on the desk. He climbed into the truck and drove north, Pine Creek shrinking in his rearview mirror, the trees giving way to open fields, and then the gray ribbon of the interstate. The hum faded with every mile, a receding tide, and by the time he hit Illinois, he convinced himself it was over. A bad scare, nothing more. A story to tell, with a laugh and a shrug. He'd edit the footage, post the video, and move on to the next job, the next town, the next shadow to chase. 3 weeks later, Ethan sat in his Chicago apartment, a cramped one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a brick building that rattled every time the L train passed. The video was finally live on his channel, titled "The Mystery of Hollow Road." A 22-minute cut of the footage, with his usual narration calm at first, then tense, then frantic, layered with ambient music and a few jump cuts for effect. It racked up views fast, 50,000 in the first day, then 100,000 by the next. His inbox flooded with emails from fans, and a couple of podcasters begging for interview. Comments poured in. "Dude, what was that shadow? Fake but creepy AF. You're insane for going there." He grinned, sipping a beer, the bottle cold against his palm. Success. Pure and simple. The kind of hit that'd keep his rent paid for months. Then the hum started again. It was faint at first, a vibration in the floorboards. So subtle he thought it was the train rumbling by. He froze, beer slipping from his hand, shattering on the hardwood, the glass scattering like teeth. The lights flickered, a staccato pulse, and the hum grew, joined by whispers, dozens, hundreds, overlapping in a chorus that filled the room, spilling from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. His laptop screen glitched, The Hollow Road footage playing unprompted. The shadow sharper now, its edges defined, its limbs too long, too thin, reaching beyond the frame. He grabbed his phone, dialing 911. His fingers slick with sweat, but the call wouldn't connect. Just static, then silence, then the hum, louder than ever. The whispers became a scream, a single note of terror that clawed at his mind, and the floor buckled, splitting open with a crack like thunder. The air turned cold, thick with the stench of rot-wet earth, decayed flesh, the same sweetness he'd smelled in the shack. Ethan stumbled back, crashing into the wall, his shoulders slamming against the plaster as the shadow rose from the cracked tall, eyeless, its form a distortion of angles and voids, a thing that shouldn't exist. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. The ground hummed, a vibration that shook the building, and Ethan understood, a realization that hit like a punch. Hollow Road wasn't a place. It was a door, a seam in the world, and he'd opened it, stepped through it, brought something back. The shadow lunged, a blur of darkness, and his scream cut off, swallowed by the hum, the apartment falling silent as the lights winked out. A week later, Ethan's channel posted a new video. No title, no thumbnail, just 20 minutes of static, punctuated by a low hum and faint whispers that no one could decipher. His subscribers argued in the comments. Glitch, hack, publicity stunt? Some called it genius. Others demanded answers. But his apartment stayed empty. The truck parked untouched in the lot, its keys still on the kitchen counter beside a half-edited script for his next video. The beer bottle lay where it fell, the glass undisturbed, a silent witness to nothing. On X, at 10Shadow87, tweeted one last time, "It's not the road you should fear. It's what walks it." The account went dark again. Its profile picture a black square, its bio a single word, gone. In Pine Creek, the motel clerk added a new key to her ring. Room 7 vacant once more. The bed made, the television silent. And out on Hollow Road, the trees leaned closer, their branches swaying though the air was still, waiting for the next curious soul to step onto the dirt and hear the hum.